So I did some research this summer, by which I mean to say I Googled it. And what I found was that there are these lists of phobias and fears, like top 100. Like these are the things that people are most afraid of. See if you can identify with any of these. Up on, somewhere on top of the list, there were things like needles and heights and crowds and public speaking and balloons and no, seriously, balloons were on the list. In fact, I had to add them to my list. A few nights ago, I was in bed, getting ready to get into that good sleep, and I heard a bang. So I put my feet on the floor, and I kind of stumbled through the hallway. You know how it is in the middle of the night. You're like, in case somebody's broken in, you're like, okay, I'm going to see what this is right now. And I went to check the kids' rooms because I thought, man, they've fallen from their bed or something. And I checked one, checked another. Kids were fine, so I went back to bed. Like 10 minutes later, my eyes are closing, I'm relaxing, and bam, 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 bam. Well, this time I got up real fast. I'm like, I want to see what that is. The kids are fine. So I do a kind of a second run through. I'm like, what is going on? And so I walk back in, and in one of our kids' rooms, there is a helium balloon that's kind of doing one of those, it's not like this. It's just kind of like, and it's not down here. It's just floating around. Well, the fan on the ceiling was going. And so it was creating some air. So the bam, 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 and I couldn't sleep. So balloons are on my list. There were other things on the list of the things that we fear. Fear might keep us awake or whatever. I mean, let's continue with crazy things like chickens. Chickens were on the list. And some of you are like, I understand why. But chickens were on the list. And I got to thinking, I wonder if that's why, that's where we came up with the phrase, man, you're just being chicken. You scared? Because at some point in history, some kids have walked up and taunted a chicken. Be like, you chicken. And that thing finally got tired of it and just said, rah, 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 and so now, and that's why everything tastes like chicken, right? It doesn't taste like chicken. It's fear that you taste. Because we're all afraid of something. Ducks were on the list. Like ducks. Ducks were on the list. Like somewhere between germs and being buried alive was ducks. My favorite one came next, though, beards. There are actually enough people who took this survey who are afraid of beards that it landed in the top 100. And I just thought in 7th grade, it was the guy who had the locker across from me. I just thought it's because he looked 38. I was 12, my voice was cracking. I thought you've been here too long. It was the beard, it was the full beard that was frightening me just before I turned a teenager. Now some of you have beards, and they're wonderful beards. Don't shave them, just realize the power that you wield. It's not that people don't want to talk to you for other reasons, they're just frightened with the beard. So if they can push past that, if you can somehow find a way to be less intimidating. So there were ducks and the chickens and beards. And then, of course, you go to the list that we would all expect. You're like, where are the spiders? Spiders were on the list. Cockroaches and other bugs were on the list of top 100 phobias. I was surprised to see that bats were not on that list. Now, I may be alone. Some of you have heard my bat story. I don't want to go into that right now. I have a new bat story. A couple of weekends ago, we were at an Impact Student Leadership Retreat, and many of you were there and participated, and a couple of you came running down the hill during a break. You were out of breath, kind of laughing, shaking your head, and you told me a bat story. You were talking about a bat that had been seen in a tree. It was the middle of the day, bat in the tree, now bat on the ground, now bat on its back, going hissing like that. And you know how it is? It's like you go by an accident. You don't just drive by. You're like, you want to see it. And so I have been paralyzed with fear from bats before. But, of course, I had to go see this hissing bat on its back. And so I go up to it, and just close enough that I can get out of there quickly. But close enough that I look concerned. I'm like, yeah, that bat needs help, right? And a couple of you are down, and one of you has a styrofoam cup trying to encourage the bat into the cup. It's not working, and so you look at me as if to say, hey, there you are. As if to say, Pastor Todd, for such a time as this, God has prepared you. And I'm thinking you're going to have to look elsewhere for leadership. That is a bad idea. I am not going down. Oh no, they're just going to keep flowing. Tuition could not rise any higher than the mountain of puns that I had for this morning. But bats were not on the list. And some of you are thinking, you know what? I know what was at the top of that list, and it's for some of you, it's your top of your list, snakes. I did not grow up with snakes. My wife grew up in the country. She opened the bathroom cabinet one time, and there was a snake right in that, and there's a snake in there. And she was like, you know, if I ever see a snake in the house, we got to move and that kind of thing. And I was like, but I didn't grow up with snakes. So the other day, I go out to feed the dog. And we got trees around, just kind of painting the scene here. And I always take his food bowl and just put it right outside. We've got a 3-season, room, kind of a back porch area. I just set it right out there. Well, right here was this snake move. So here's my wrist, and here's this snake, right? And it's like, like that. It actually stuck its arm up. No, that was its tongue, of course. I said, ah. But before that, a few months ago was my first encounter. It was late spring, early summer. It was before the moment with the dog food, so I wasn't ready. I wasn't thinking like that. I wasn't prepared. Fear sometimes creeps up on us, doesn't it? And so we had some patio stones that we inherited, and they were laid like this, and we wanted to lift them and move them and lay them like that. So I had some of those gloves that go all the way down here. Like you're just out pulling weeds and trimming and all that. And so you've got to be careful, right? No thorns, no poison ivy, no snakes. And so I'm reaching down there with my fingers up under the stones. Not a care in the world, right? So while you work, just tossing the stones, fingers, real close, just like, My daughter's over here swinging on the swing set. And she's just watching me. So you can't really play it off. I tried. I lifted that thing, that snake was coiled up under there. I said, Daddy, what's wrong? Nothing, I'm good. I was good to... No, really, what's wrong? And so I had to show her and I had to tell her, and she ran in and got her brothers, and the whole family's there on the porch, now looking at the snake. All I had to do, it was hibernating. It was still asleep. All I had to do was to take that blade, use it to scrape up, glue on old carpet. All I had to do, and I was just shaking. All I had to do was get close enough to it. This was my Legolas and Helm's Deep moment. All I had to do, this was my Katniss of Anderson second. All I had to do, this was Luke. All you have to do is get the shot right there. No, it's not easy. I know you're afraid. Use the Force, Luke. Thank you, Ben. But I'm so afraid. Fear leads to anger. Not now, Yoda. I got to focus on the snake. And so I just couldn't. I was like, it's hibernating. I can't do that. It's a snake. I can't do that. And so I didn't. We all have fears. My first week here as campus pastor a few years back, I was afraid. I was afraid to be here because I wanted to be here. I felt called to be here. But I was like, God, I don't know why you have me in this chair, in this office, on this campus at this time. Like I didn't grow up at 3 years old when the other kids were like, I want to be a firefighter and an astronaut. I want to be a campus pastor. Like I didn't know that was a job. So I hadn't been prepared mentally in that way. But that's where God led me, here. But that didn't mean I wasn't afraid that I would say the wrong thing. Afraid that somebody would ask me a question and I wouldn't have a good answer. Afraid that I would give guidance that went in the wrong direction. Afraid that I didn't have enough maturity. Afraid that I hadn't built up enough experience. Afraid that I didn't have the right degrees, the right preparation. But I was here and I was afraid. Abraham, in the scriptures, was afraid. God had brought him to a place had called him to go to a place that he had never been before. And I can't help but think that he was afraid. Let's look at this scripture together. It was by faith that Abraham obeyed when God called him to leave home and go to another land that God would give him as his inheritance. He went without knowing where he was going. And even when he reached the land God promised him, he lived there by faith, for he was like a foreigner living in tents. Living in tents. Let's leave the scripture up, please. So several years ago, new job, new town, new opportunities, new fears. And here I was. And I remembered an old saying, an old teaching, almost an old cliche that had been buried in the back of my mind and reinforced at particular seasons. Kind of like a seed planted that's watered in ways and you don't even know that it's happening, but God is preparing you for such a time as this. When you're younger, when you're a teenager, as you get a little older, it's like, yeah, God's preparing you. Even if you don't know you're being prepared. That was my experience, and in that moment, asking God, what am I supposed to do? It came back to me. Something like this. Wherever God calls, God equips. I've also heard it like this. Wherever God sends, God prepares. Or like this. Wherever you find yourself in the will of God, God is able to give you what you need. Wherever God calls, God equips. Whoever and wherever, God equips. Wherever God sends you, wherever God takes me, God prepares us for that journey, for that adventure, for that work. Wherever we find ourselves, because it's not always, I wake up in the morning and I know it's not always a burning bush experience where God speaks so clearly. Sometimes we just wake up in the morning and we realize we're right in the center of where God wants us to be. Now what are we gonna do? As God begins to speak and we begin to understand what God has done, some of what God has done, God prepares and equips and is able to give you what you need. So God called Abraham to go to a place that he had never been before. To leave his home, to leave the security, everything and everybody he had known, and to go out on this journey, this adventure of trust. And I love that line that says, he went without knowing where he was going. Some of you in the room this morning are like, I am here and I don't know where I'm going. Every once in a while, I'll ask some of you seniors the question, what's next? What's after this? Where are you going? And sometimes you're just brutally honest with me and you say, I don't know. And I just want to affirm you this morning, that's okay. If you feel called by God and you're being equipped in this place by God, God will take care of the where. Some of you are on campus for the first time this semester. This is a new place, a new experience. You packed your bags, you signed the forms, you talked with admissions a few times, you checked out the website, and the next thing you know it, like you're here. And some of you are like, I'm ready to go back. But if you've been called here, if God has opened this door, if God has made a way, through some crazy circumstances maybe, and maybe this wasn't your first choice, maybe you didn't choose this at all, you just were like, okay, this will work, But if you've had that kind of deep down sense that somehow in some way, maybe you're supposed to be here, God is preparing you in this place for where God will lead you next, it's okay. And some of you have come back as sophomores and juniors. And for some of you, it was a tough call. You're like, you know what, maybe my first year experience or second, maybe it was okay. I thought about changing or transferring, but here I am. At the end of the day, the bottom line was, God, I can't explain it. I don't really know how the rest of the semester of the years are going to go, but I am here, and that's okay. He went out. He went without knowing where he was going. So what do you do when you don't know where you're going? Sometimes when you don't even hardly know where you are. or what we're supposed to do. Well, that's that beautiful line about tents. And even when he reached the land God promised him, even when you arrived at Anderson University, even when you took that first or second or 10th crucial step on God's destiny, God's journey, God's plan for your life, when you got here, when you arrived here, you knew this wasn't the end. Only a few of you will become resident directors and actually live on a college campus for the rest of your life. That's a calling for some. Most of us won't live here. We know this is temporary, but we at least sense maybe deep down that this is where God is leading me. So what do? Well, I can constantly keep looking back and keep looking around and fearing, what if I get too homesick? What if I don't make friends? What if this major doesn't work? What if I flunk out? What if I run out of money? And you know what? All of those are potentials. Those are possibilities. But fear is not the only option. The story says it was by faith that Abraham obeyed. I don't think for a second Abraham didn't have any fear or any cause to fear. God had a promise, but Abraham, physically speaking, was not able to deliver on that promise. Sarah wasn't able to do what God said, this is what you're going to do, and this is what you're going to have, and this is what I'm going to do with the world through you and your children. We're too old. We don't have any children. Count the stars, Abram. That's how many children you're going to have. And Abraham had to make a choice to either live by fear and say, no, I don't think so. Or to take steps by faith and say, I don't know how you're going to provide. I don't know how you're going to deliver. But wherever you lead me, by faith, that's where I'm going to go. I want to invite Clay Orender and the band to come back out and to lead us in one more song that he wrote with this campus theme in mind.
Would you stand with us again, AU? So I wrote this song about 6 months ago, and it was after I realized that I'd just been pursuing comfort for so much of my life. And when I finally was just in comfort, and I realized that I had surrounded myself by all these comfortable things, and that I just wasn't living. And I finally got to the place where I decided to make the journey my home, to make the process my home, because life is continually a process, and comfort is not something that we can cling to or put our identity in, because it will come and go. And so I wanted to put my comfort and my identity in the process. You good
Exercise my freedoms from far past boundary lines. My feet turn betray me when I see what I leave behind. Cause I've been paralyzed by what I've always been chasing after. The enemy kings when you see, never see it till you fall in. Too long to comfort in my home and safety. Surrounded in with the crowd, now trapped in cannot see. It's me on me to wait for invitation. I was standing at my door when I would turn leave you, just not harder than before. Thank you, AU. You're dismissed. Have a great